My wife left me for several weeks and subsequently admitted to engaging in extramarital relations for a period of 4 years. She cited a lack of stimulation as the primary reason for her infidelity. Currently, she has expressed a desire to resume our marital relationship. I find myself in a state of uncertainty regarding my current circumstances. I am seeking any form of insight or guidance. My wife is 39 years of age, and I am 40. We have been married for 17 years. As previously mentioned, we have 3 daughters, aged 15 and 13. We are high school sweethearts who have been together for approximately 23 years. I am aware of the circumstances surrounding our separation. The only information I have is that my wife returned home 3 days ago from work. She had to work on the 4th day, too, and left abruptly, packing an overnight bag and leaving without informing me. I only learned of her absence because our eldest daughter was home at the time and observed her departure. I attempted to communicate with her, but she was visibly distressed and did not respond. She stated that she was experiencing a sense of imminent panic. In response to our text messages, SL contacted her parents, who eventually responded, stating that my wife was safe with them. I implore you to be patient and understanding, as this is the extent of the information I have. I attempted to contact her sister, brother, and one of her close colleagues. Her brother stated that he was unaware of any developments, and her colleague indicated that she was at work in the morning and subsequently absent. By the time lunch arrived 3 days ago, that was the extent of the information available. 3 days have passed with no further contact from my wife, not even with the children. No one has provided any further details, and I am left to manage the situation with my 3 daughters, who are understandably in need of their mother's care. They frequently inquire about the situation and ask about the well-being of their mother. However, I am unable to provide any concrete information, other than that she is a grandmother and that we are expected to be patient. I am experiencing an overwhelming urge to abruptly depart from my wife's residence, which is only 3 hours away. The prolonged period of uncertainty is distressing for me and for my children, who believe that we have engaged in a significant conflict leading to our divorce. However, this is not the case. My children are aware that we have not been in disagreement. I am uncertain about the circumstances surrounding my wife's actions, but I seek logical explanations from a third party. From my current emotional state, I am unable to think clearly and am struggling to manage everything without her. If someone passed away, wouldn't your spouse be the first person you would tell? Perhaps some past trauma has been brought to life, but if it were me, my wife would be the first person I would come to for support. We know nothing and nothing makes sense. I don't know what to do. I am uncertain of the appropriate course of action and find myself in a state of limbo, with limited information and no guidance. This situation is causing me a range of emotions, including worry, fear, and anger. I am seeking a logical explanation for this abrupt departure. Is there a reason why someone would choose to cut off contact with their family in this manner? I must admit that I am not yet well versed in the intricacies of Reddit. I apologize if my contributions here are not as insightful as they could be. I am unsure how to link my previous post. I spent a considerable amount of time attempting to do so, but was ultimately unsuccessful. I had a rather trying night, I did not get sufficient rest and am therefore not in the best frame of mind to provide a comprehensive update. I ask for your understanding. I do not anticipate spending much time on the computer today, but I did read every post from yesterday onwards. We eventually read responses today. I will provide you with the information I am currently aware of and refrain from offering any further insights. My father, my in-law, did not contact me last night, so I eventually contacted the police. They conducted a wellness check, as many of you suggested. This resulted in a series of unforeseen complications. However, it has become evident that my wife has been engaged in an extramarital affair for at least 2 years, likely longer. The other man, it seems, suffered a fatal heart attack on Tuesday and subsequently passed away that night. My mother-in-law and, it appears, my sister-in-law were aware of this situation. My wife's mother and sister-in-law have been aware of the affair for some time and have been covering for her. There has been no contact from my wife, nor from the girls, who are being kept from this information for the time being. I am unsure how to proceed, given this news. I am grateful for all of the advice and support I have received thus far. I am not yet sure how to move on from this information, but I will try to do so. If you pray, please pray for me and my family. I have been recommended to join this sub by several individuals. I have recently subscribed to this forum and have been perusing numerous posts when I have the opportunity, primarily in the evening hours when the day's tumultuous events have receded. My mind then becomes consumed by a cyclical pattern of depressive and angry emotions, which impede my ability to obtain sufficient rest. I am attempting to familiarize myself with the various acronyms associated with this condition. The day in question was Friday. My wife was experiencing what I initially believed to be it is now evident that the affair in question was not merely a year-long liaison, but rather a protracted and deeply intimate relationship. The man with whom she was involved was someone she had known for a considerable period of time. Tragically, he suffered a fatal heart attack, which prompted her to make the revelation. I am still gathering information with the assistance of my eldest daughter. There are numerous details I am not yet prepared to share. I had not anticipated continuing to post about my situation, but I have been overwhelmed by the support and guidance offered by so many individuals. Seeking counsel and guidance has proved beneficial, as it has provided a sense of catharsis to discover that numerous individuals have experienced similar challenges and endured comparable anguish. I extend my deepest sympathies to those who have endured this kind of pain. I have met with 2 distinct legal professionals, both yesterday and today, to explore potential avenues of redress. Additionally, I have contacted several institutions regarding therapeutic options. However, given the prevailing circumstances in my locale, adhering to the recommendations put forth by these individuals has proven challenging. One such recommendation is to abstain from alcohol. However, I do not consume alcohol and have never done so. I would consider myself to be in relatively good physical condition for someone of my age. However, I currently lack the energy to engage in regular exercise. I anticipate that many of you will inquire about the specifics of my situation, including the individuals involved, the timeline of events, and other pertinent details. However, I am not yet prepared to divulge that information. Each day brings a new challenge, and my immediate priority is to improve my sleep. My wife was my best friend since high school and the mother of my 3 daughters. We shared a close bond, with inside jokes and secret handshakes. However, that relationship has now been irrevocably damaged. I find myself dwelling on the many years we spent together, every milestone, and every laugh. This constant reminder of her absence has led to a profound sense of depression. It feels as though our relationship was inconsequential to her, and my future now seems bleak without her. I experience a surge of intense anger that I cannot control. I scream into my pillow and punch the mattress until my arms cramp. This is a vicious cycle. I only sleep out of sheer exhaustion. Then, I wake up suddenly and engage in relentless mental battles. I expend all of my remaining energy on my daughters, who have been caring for me as if I were their parent. This is unfair to them. How did you all cope after you found out about how did you cope with the silence and the emotional void at night when you were alone with your thoughts? I have decided that my daughter's sleep needs to be my number 1 priority in all of this, but I am struggling to do so. I am hoping you can provide some guidance. Thank you in advance for your help. I am relatively new to Reddit and am unsure of the appropriate level of detail I should share about my situation. It has been just over a week since since that time, I have learned that my wife's affair had been ongoing for over 4 years. There is still no exact timeline, but it is likely that it began as an emotional relationship and then turned physical. I am curious about how the pandemic and lockdowns may have played a role in this situation. I may or may not receive answers to these questions, but I am interested in learning more. Yesterday, my in-laws made an unannounced visit to see their grandchildren. Delul has been staying at their house since the beginning of this unfortunate situation, which is highly inappropriate. They spent only 15 minutes greeting the girl's wife and I have 3 daughters. They then requested a private conversation with me, which lasted a considerable amount of time. One might anticipate that I would not provide a comprehensive account of this dialogue on this forum. However, to summarize, my wife expressed a desire to return home, yet she is concerned about the potential consequences of her actions and is hesitant to confront the reality of her actions. Additionally, her parents sought to ascertain whether I was contemplating divorce and invested a significant amount of time and effort in influencing my decision. Despite their attempts to persuade me to forgive my wife and reconcile the marriage, it was evident that they were deeply ashamed and embarrassed. However, it was also apparent that they wanted my wife out of their house. The conversation was conducted in a civil and respectful manner. I admit that I misled them by stating that I was uncertain about my future plans, despite my intention to divorce. I am contemplating divorce, but I feel that if I reveal this, I will never receive the truth from my wife. I may never receive it, but I want her to sit in front of me and explain it all, if possible, over 17 years of marriage and being together since high school. We have 3 children and have shared countless memories. I want her to look me in the eyes, and I also want my children to be aware that I provided my wife with the opportunity to clarify her position, to express remorse, and to engage in constructive dialogue as mature adults. I am striving to select a course of action that will serve as an exemplary model for my children. However, I am uncertain if my approach is optimal from a legal standpoint. My wife's continued residence in our home was made explicitly clear by our lawyer. Consequently, should she choose to return, I am unable to prevent her from doing so. However, at this juncture, I am not inclined to pursue this course of action. My daughters and I have recently established a comfortable routine, and I have therefore made a request that I believe will be unattainable for the foreseeable future. I stipulated that my wife could either return to our home or, alternatively, when she then proceeded to meet with me in person, maintaining eye contact and providing a comprehensive account of her extramarital affair, addressing all of my inquiries without reservation or further dissembling. She subsequently engaged in a similar dialogue with our daughters, offering an apology in person and responding to their queries. This approach was deemed appropriate, given their existing awareness of the situation. Once again, she is legally permitted to return to her residence at her own discretion and is under no obligation to comply with any requests. However, if she is reluctant to confront us, we might be able to leverage this to our advantage. Is this an unethical strategy? I am not attempting to be deceitful or manipulative. I simply do not want to begin cohabitation at this time, if I can postpone it. There is a mandatory 90-day waiting period in our state before a divorce can be finalized. A waiting period of at least 1 day is required by state law before a divorce can be finalized. It is inevitable that she will return home. Eventually, both of us will have to resume our professional lives, and life will continue regardless of this unfortunate situation. I am prolonging the process to allow myself time to plan and recover from the emotional distress caused by this situation. My wife has been communicating with the girls via text messages, stating that she does not intend to divorce and repeatedly apologizing to them. She has been asking me about my well-being and seems to be coming to terms with the reality of her actions and their impact on our family. The situation has become increasingly challenging, particularly in recent days. How might I navigate this? My wife's imminent return seems imminent. Nevertheless, I am confident in my chosen course of action. I am not unduly distressed by this turn of events, as I anticipated it would occur at some point. My primary objective is to make the most beneficial decision for my daughters and myself as we move forward. I am grateful to all those who have offered encouragement, advice, and support. Update 4, this will be somewhat anticlimactic, but I apologize for the length. I must convey this experience, which has been a particularly trying one. My wife returned home yesterday, and the atmosphere was noticeably strained. As the week progressed, I had been accustomed to greeting her with a hug and kiss. However, on this occasion, there was a palpable unease between us. She approached me with an attempt at a hug, but I declined, and she eventually settled in. I then requested that she share her thoughts with me, and she reiterated that she stated that she was not prepared to return home. During our telephone conversation earlier in the week, she had expressed the same sentiment. I informed her that the only condition I would accept was that she demonstrate a sufficient level of commitment to the family to explain her prolonged absence, which had now reached 3 weeks. However, she reiterated that she was not ready to do so. I attempted to maintain my composure, taking a few deep breaths, but I ultimately failed to do so. After the first of many lengthy pauses, I abruptly stated that she had been engaged in an extramarital affair for over 4 years with a colleague. The employee in question had planned to terminate the relationship and pursue a romantic involvement with another individual. She had also ignored her family's communications and now entered the premises without fulfilling the single condition that I had requested, namely, that she initiate the dissolution of the marriage. At this juncture, her body language and facial expressions indicated that she was unaware of the extent of my knowledge regarding her extramarital activities. She briefly glanced at me, her eyes widening in apparent surprise. She simply stood in the kitchen, staring at the floor and remaining silent. Her demeanor was stoic, and I anticipated a range of potential responses, including an emotional outburst, a tearful confession, or a heated exchange where she would accuse me of being responsible for the affair. Instead, she remained silent, and we sat down to discuss the matter. The subsequent reaction was one of absolute silence, which lasted approximately 5 minutes. It was a rather peculiar moment. It was evident that neither of us knew what to say. I had carefully read all of the comments and responses from others regarding my situation. I had even taken notes. I sat in front of a mirror and had prepared myself for all possible scenarios. I had considered a number of potential scenarios that this confrontation might present, but I ultimately decided to proceed with a different approach. I decided to map out everything I knew about her affair, including my own assumptions about several aspects of the situation. I informed her of everything I knew, including how she met AP, her sister's involvement, and the events that transpired. COVID etc. She simply gazed at the floor. As I proceeded, I became increasingly agitated, as she merely responded with monosyllables. I endeavored to maintain composure, but the prolonged silence was unbearable. I finally regained my equilibrium, only to be overcome by a sense of sadness as I contemplated the gravity of the situation. I inquired softly, as to whether I had done anything to cause her to reject me, and whether she had ever loved me. I then asked whether the affair was worth it. She remained silent, without any emotional response. There were no tears, no apology, no yelling, no explanation. She simply stood there with her head down. This hurt more than the day I learned of the affair. I was unsure whether I would have the courage to stand there and stare at her if I were in her position. I was initially moved, but then things deteriorated. Of course, our daughters were eavesdropping on the entire encounter. I recognized that I made a significant error in judgment. In recent weeks, I have dedicated a great deal of energy to prioritizing our daughters' needs. However, I became emotionally overwhelmed and did not consider their whereabouts once I confronted my wife. The eldest daughter descended the stairs and unleashed a considerable amount of pent-up anger. My wife promptly retreated upstairs and secured the bedroom door, which is where we currently stand. I overheard my wife weeping for the majority of the night until I fell asleep. Only our youngest sibling has attempted to engage in conversation with her, while the rest of us have chosen to avoid her. I am going to suggest that she stay with her sister until we are able to finalize the divorce. However, this is still her home, too. It would be unwise for us all to cohabitate with her, as it would undoubtedly be miserable. I was mistaken about my wife and all of you were correct. I was mistaken about all of our years together and all of the memories and life experiences that we have shared. In a momentary shift, I was convinced she would drop to her knees and beg forgiveness. I was so convinced that she would reap the consequences of the last 4 years and unload the truth to absolve her guilt. This woman once drove back to a farmer's market when she realized she had been given $10 too much in change. It is evident that she no longer values our relationship. I, too, have come to realize that I am of little consequence to her. Perhaps I never was. The discomfort I experienced at home today was palpable. My daughters and I attempted to maintain our usual routine, but it was clear that this was untenable. I find myself longing for a swift transition beyond the divorce, beyond the awkward conversations, and beyond the inevitable arguments. How did those who have had to cohabitate with their WS manage to do so? I am aware that this is just the beginning. Despite reading numerous posts that suggest that things will improve, I am currently a long way from that point. There is not a single moment when I do not want to scream at my WS for being so inconsiderate. I am trying very hard to maintain my composure. It is challenging to maintain composure for the sake of the children, of course, but I am unsure if I can sustain this for 3 months. School will commence well before this situation is resolved. This is my reality now. I am grateful for your interest and input. I am uncertain if the most challenging period is behind us or yet to come, but I appreciate any assistance you can provide. To assist me in navigating the forthcoming phase of my life, I am currently experiencing a period of considerable distress. Since my wife's infidelity was revealed, I have been attempting to maintain a facade for the benefit of our daughters. I endeavor to utter the appropriate words and to think the right thoughts. However, I am compelled to acknowledge the truth, as many of you contribute to this forum on a daily basis. The emotional distress I am experiencing manifests in waves. Tonight, I was struck by a particularly intense episode, resulting in a momentary loss of composure. While the divorce proceedings have commenced, my former spouse has not yet retained legal counsel. I am striving to maintain composure and delicacy in this regard, as I am beginning to discern the possibility of an uncontested divorce. This would entail a primarily self-managed process, which I view as a potential avenue for achieving a resolution. However, following tonight's developments, I am uncertain about the viability of this approach. I am uncertain as to the specifics of the situation. My wife has been residing at her sister's house during the weekdays, returning home on Sunday nights. Her sister lives approximately an hour away, and given the proximity of our family home, this has created a challenging dynamic. In recent weeks, there has been a noticeable pattern of avoidance. My daughters and I have been attempting to maintain a sense of normalcy, despite the ongoing tensions. I have been attempting to maintain a normal routine while my wife, WW, has largely been avoiding social interaction. There are occasional casual interactions each evening, but my eldest daughter and I have not been speaking with her following a series of unfortunate disagreements. It seems that this is the most appropriate course of action for the time being. I have been absorbing a great deal of advice from various sources, in addition to reading material on the subject. I am striving to develop a more constructive approach to my own behavior. I have been exercising discipline around my wife. Despite the exertion of considerable strength and willpower, I have been exhibiting a lack of consideration and indifference towards her when we briefly interact. However, I have consistently maintained a polite and respectful demeanor. In recent instances, on the last couple of Fridays, she has returned from work, gathered a few belongings, and departed for her sister's residence for the weekend. I am even home from work, but not tonight. She was waiting in the kitchen for me when I got home. I attempted to simply walk past, but she lightly grabbed my hand and inquired as to whether this was how I would treat her, solely because she was not yet prepared to discuss her affair, which, incidentally, is the first time she has since the incident occurred almost a month ago. There has been no mention of her infidelity. I attempted to remain silent and walk away, but our daughters were not present, and I was overcome with emotion. I unleashed a torrent of pent-up frustration, anguish, and pain. I cannot quantify the length of time I spoke. I lost all sense of temporality. At times, I raised my voice, became somewhat animated, and spoke at a high volume. I finally broke down and revealed the extent of my emotional distress, the agony I endure daily, and the torments I have been concealing. In fact, I could compose a post of considerable length. The length of the account would be considerable if I were to attempt to provide a comprehensive and detailed account of my utterances. I was determined not to cease my discourse and, naturally, I became emotional once more. I was overcome with a profound sense of self-reproach. I had been making admirable progress, but this incident proved to be a significant setback. I had anticipated that this would occur. I had foreseen that I would become vulnerable to her influence. I had been aware that this was a possibility for some time. It was a source of immense discomfort. During the wait, I had experienced a surge of emotion and found myself overwhelmed with tears. This was the first occasion on which I had become visibly emotional. Regrettably, witnessing her suffering evoked a positive emotional response in me. Despite my initial desire to disassociate from her pain, I found a certain satisfaction in her emotional outburst. It seemed to confirm the presence of at least one individual capable of empathy within the situation. Additionally, I was taken aback by her repeated apologies during my own emotional display. Her emotional state was characterized by a kind of ugly crying, which I found surprising. She merely expressed her regret, and I subsequently departed the kitchen before she could recover her composure sufficiently to utter further words. I instructed her to refrain from contacting me, which she did. She lingered in the vicinity of the kitchen for a brief period before departing once more for her sister's residence. The girls returned approximately 30 minutes later and were aware that something had transpired. It was challenging to conceal the incident. I was not prepared to discuss the matter further and believe that the younger children have been progressing well. Disclosing this information to my eldest daughter would only serve to exacerbate the situation, which I am keen to avoid. I am extremely distressed by this turn of events and regret my inability to maintain composure. I abruptly turned away from my WW and walked away. In retrospect, it seems that she was attempting to initiate a discussion about her affair but lacked the necessary skills to do so. It is likely that she did not progress very far in the conversation because I became visibly upset. I am now concerned about her well-being. I anticipate that many of you will criticize my actions, but I am concerned that her isolation and lack of support could have adverse effects on her mental health. The situation has resulted in her being isolated and alone with her thoughts, with nearly everyone turning their back on her. While it is true that she has brought this upon herself, she is still a human being and the mother of my children. This has caused a significant setback for me. I am disappointed in myself and sorry for my actions. This is another long rant, but I needed to get it out. I called my brother and ranted to him too. I will try to start again. On Monday, I experienced a sense of catharsis in expressing my frustrations to her. However, I am now grappling with the dilemma of whether to reach out to my wife or to refrain from doing so. I am uncertain whether to initiate communication or to let things lie. I am a highly emotional individual, and I am struggling to maintain composure. I am grateful for your willingness to listen and for your support. I am also appreciative of the advice you have provided amidst the chaos. We have initiated therapy as a means of coping with the challenges we are facing. I am aware that many of you have reached out to me, and I am grateful for your concern. As many of you correctly predicted, my situation is not ideal, and I have not had the opportunity to access the internet. I had considered taking a temporary break from online activities, but this week has been particularly challenging. My wife, on the other hand, has not exhibited the same level of distress. My wife has been exceedingly kind and remorseful throughout the week, expressing her sorrow and seeking my attention. She has repeatedly knocked on my door at night, requesting conversation. I have chosen to ignore her at times, but have engaged in dialogue when I felt inclined to do so. However, on Wednesday night, I finally lost my composure and admonished her to leave me alone. Then, last night, the situation reached a boiling point. It has been just over a month since my wife's infidelity became public knowledge. After her extramarital affair was discovered, my wife returned home. Now that we have entered a period of uncomfortable cohabitation, she entered my room after the children had gone to bed and requested a private conversation. This was a departure from her previous approach throughout the week. Initially, I was amenable to the discussion, but we ultimately relocated to the garage and sat in my vehicle to avoid a confrontation in front of the children. This lasted approximately 3 hours. I am unsure how much information I should divulge. I spent the entire night listening to her weeping for several hours, which prevented me from sleeping. I also experienced a range of intense emotions, including sadness, anger, and frustration. I apologize for taking a day or so to respond to anyone, but I need to process this experience and try to sleep. It has not helped that my wife has been constantly apologizing and begging me for another chance. I also had to leave for a few hours tonight to get away from her. The situation is extremely painful. To be in her presence was challenging. She was introduced to her AP by her sister, who had initiated contact approximately 5 years prior. It is believed that there were no romantic intentions on his part, but he was a senior executive at a company she aspired to join and currently does. He provided her with an apartment, which suggests that her desire to change jobs was not solely driven by her affair. Once she did change jobs, however, she had additional motivation. After securing the position, the AP began to pursue her romantically, initially through text messages and then pictures, followed by more text messages and physical contact. This occurred just before she terminated her relationship with company. She initially disclosed the affair to her sister and expressed a desire to be transparent with me. However, she ultimately decided to refrain from disclosing this information. My wife asserted that she had ceased all communication with her affair partner, AP, shortly after the incident. However, following the lifting of restrictions and lockdowns, he initiated communication with her once more, and she resumed speaking with him. As businesses resumed their operations, she claims to have terminated the affair on multiple occasions, driven by feelings of guilt. Nevertheless, she continued to engage in communication with him, ultimately leading to the continuation of the affair. In essence, she provided a comprehensive account of the affair, which spanned a considerable duration. The packet of handwritten notes detailing her affair timeline was read aloud in its entirety, with responses provided to each question. It became evident that she had fabricated numerous details, including accounts of weekend trips with her daughters, business travel, traffic congestion, familial issues, and shopping excursions. The list of fabricated events was extensive, suggesting a pattern of deceit. Despite the numerous inconsistencies, she was consistently trusted and never questioned. However, it became clear that her actions were merely a facade to maintain her relationship with him. While hearing this information, it became evident that her affections for him remained consistent throughout. During this period, she did not exhibit the typical signs of distance and disinterest that are often cited in such cases. While her level of intimacy did change, it did not reach the level of red flags that I would have expected to see. She openly acknowledged her feelings for AP and her desire to build a life with him. He was older, divorced, and single, and he made promises to her that included expensive gifts and vacations. She began to fantasize about escaping her responsibilities within the family and claimed that the excitement of being with him was too much to resist. She also discussed how bored she became with the routines of family life. She was remarkably open and emotional during this time. I was overcome with emotion and began to weep. I was distressed to hear her recount these experiences, as one might expect. Once she had finished her confession, she informed me that she had always loved me and that she was prepared to do anything and everything to try to save the marriage. It was evident that this outcome was foreseeable, yet the sincerity of her confession seemed contrived and rehearsed. Having been in this relationship for over half of my life, I am adept at discerning when she is being untruthful. Perhaps I am mistaken, but I was able to compose myself more effectively than I had in the past. The week that followed saw a further deterioration in the relationship, with the woman becoming increasingly angry and saying a few unkind things. She made a disparaging remark about her AP, implying that he was seeing other women and that she was merely one of many. This seemed to upset her considerably. As the situation developed, I considered a number of possible responses and ways of hurting her. However, in the heat of the moment, I was unable to think of any. One thing I was sure of, though, was that I would ask about the AP. She was forced to choose between him and me. She initially hesitated, then mumbled that it was not a fair question. I pressed the issue, and she eventually said that she would, of course, pick me. My response was that her hesitation was the reason I was divorcing her because she was lying again. She began to sob. That was the last time she spoke. We sat in the car for some time, during which she continued to sob. I was tired, so I informed her that we were divorcing. I also told her that it was important for the girls to have two parents who could coexist in a civil manner and be present in their lives. I added that, given the pain she had caused me, I hope she was capable of divorcing me fairly and amicably, which would demonstrate her genuine love for me. The final thing I said to her was taken from another online source. I would like to clarify that I am not a petty person and did not intentionally inflict pain on her. It appeared to be a fitting conclusion, but I was unequivocally sincere in my statements and actions. I leaned over and kissed her on the forehead, stating that I would have loved her forever, then exited the vehicle and retired for the evening. That was the extent of my actions. Naturally, I was unable to sleep last night, and I am experiencing the same difficulty tonight. Once again, the opportunity for her to contest the divorce has passed. This is a positive outcome, although I have not yet consulted with my lawyer. I am experiencing a recurrence of my emotional distress and sinking back into the depths of depression and anger. It was extremely difficult to hear everything last night. In retrospect, I believe I could have done without it all. Now that I know she could have lied and made it all up, it seems even more implausible. However, it aligned perfectly with my conclusions from the past month. This is a never-ending process. It seems I have a few good days begin to feel strong again, only to be followed by another unexpected turn of events. It seems as though an eternity has passed, yet it has only been a few days. I am attempting to sleep, to escape from the reality of the situation. Imagine, if you can, the love of your life, the only woman you have ever loved, ever kissed. She tells you that she has been unfaithful to you for over 4 years. She claims that she was merely bored, that she did not fall out of love, that she did not grow apart, that there were no relationship issues, and that there was no dead bedroom. She claims that she was simply bored. Is this a worse or a better situation? Thank you for reading and for your support. I have had 2 very bad nights.